the day humanity was cast aside. For nearly 3 centuries, it had not been easy. When humans first reached the stars, many species viewed them as reckless newcomers. They were ambitious, stubborn, and frighteningly adaptable. While other civilizations specialized in a few environments, humans seemed capable of surviving almost anywhere. They settled frozen moons, volcanic worlds, toxic swamps, and barren asteroids. At first, the Council considered humanity useful but unremarkable. That opinion changed during the crisis of Velora. A swarm of biomechanical predators had emerged from deep space, consuming entire systems. One by one, Council fleets fell before them. The mighty fleets of the Archon Dominion failed. Only humanity stood its ground. For 7 years, human fleets fought across hundreds of star systems. They lost worlds. Eventually, through a combination of innovation, sacrifice, and sheer stubbornness, humanity discovered the weakness of the invaders and led the campaign that saved the galaxy. Every species benefited. Every species remembered. Or so humanity believed. The betrayal began decades later. The Council had grown comfortable in peace. Trade flourished. Technology advanced. And as often happened during long periods of prosperity, many forgot who had paid for it. The growing influence of Earth became a source of resentment. Human corporations controlled major shipping routes. Human engineers built most of the Council's infrastructure. Human diplomats successfully negotiated disputes that others could not. To many Council members, humanity seemed too powerful, too influential, too independent. The species that had once been praised as heroes slowly became viewed as a threat. At first, the signs were subtle. Political accusations. Investigations into human companies. Then came propaganda campaigns. News networks across dozens of worlds began portraying humans as aggressive expansionists. Historical records were quietly altered. The crisis of Velora was rewritten. Instead of being the galaxy's saviors, humans were increasingly depicted as opportunists who had profited from war. Most humans dismissed it as political nonsense. They underestimated how far the Council was willing to go. The turning point arrived during the Grand Assembly on Arcadia Station. Representatives from over 200 species gathered in the Council chamber. Billions watched the broadcast. The agenda appeared routine. Trade negotiations. Resource allocations. Security agreements. Then Supreme Chancellor Varex announced an emergency proposal. The chamber fell silent. After extensive investigation, Varex declared that the Galactic Council has determined that humanity poses an unacceptable risk to galactic stability. Shock spread through the hall. The human ambassador, Helena Ward, rose immediately. "This is absurd." Varex ignored her. He continued reading from prepared documents. Human military growth. Economic influence. Technological development. Every achievement humanity had earned was twisted into evidence of dangerous intentions. Ambassador Ward demanded proof. None was provided. Instead, the Council voted. One by one, lights illuminated across the chamber. Green. 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 Approval. The final result appeared. Humanity was expelled from the Galactic Council. Gasps echoed through the hall. Ward stared at the display in disbelief. Centuries of partnership erased in a single vote. But the Council was not finished. Additional sanctions followed. Human ships were banned from Council space. Trade agreements were cancelled. Research partnerships terminated. Military cooperation dissolved. Entire colonies found themselves economically isolated overnight. For the first time since joining the interstellar community, humanity stood alone. Celebrations erupted across many Council worlds. Political leaders declared a new era of balance. Commentators praised the decision. Analysts predicted humanity would quickly decline. After all, no civilization could thrive without Council support. At least, that was what they believed. Back on Earth, the reaction was different. There was anger, disappointment, a profound sense of betrayal. But there was no panic. President Marcus Hale addressed humanity from Geneva Orbital. His speech became one of the most famous in history. We offered friendship. We offered sacrifice. We offered loyalty. And today, that loyalty, he paused. Millions listened in silence. We will not beg. We will not threaten. We will simply move forward. Let history judge who made the greater mistake. Across human space, something changed. The desire for acceptance vanished. The need for approval disappeared. Humanity turned inward. Factories expanded. Research programs accelerated. Exploration fleets received unprecedented funding. Projects once considered too ambitious suddenly became priorities. If the galaxy wanted humanity gone, then humanity would build a future without the galaxy. Few noticed the significance of those decisions. Even fewer understood their consequences. Beyond the outer colonies, hidden within classified facilities, the ancient projects long buried beneath layers of secrecy were quietly reactivated. Projects connected to discoveries made during the Velora War. Discoveries humanity had never shared with the Council. Discoveries that could alter the balance of power across the entire universe. As the Council congratulated itself on removing humanity from galactic affairs, deep beneath the Martian Research Complex, a sealed vault opened for the first time in 80 years. Inside rested an artifact recovered from the Age of None, an artifact older than any civilization. Older than the Council. Older than recorded history itself. And when its dormant systems finally awakened, the signal was transmitted into the darkness between galaxies. A signal that should never have been sent. A signal that something had returned. Something ancient. Something waiting. And somewhere far beyond the reach of every known star, something answered. The forgotten secret of Mars. The signal traveled further than any transmission humanity had ever recorded. It crossed the spiral arms of the galaxy. It passed through dark nebulae where stars had never formed. It moved beyond regions, and then it disappeared into the unknown. Inside the Martian Research Complex, alarms flashed across dozens of monitoring stations. Scientists rushed between consoles. Engineers stared at data streams that made no sense. The artifact had been dormant for 80 years. Now it was awake. Dr. Sofia Reyes, director of the facility, stood before the massive structure hidden beneath kilometers of Martian bedrock. Even after years of study, it remained impossible to fully understand. The object resembled a sphere nearly 50 meters across. Its surface appeared metallic, yet no known instrument could identify its composition. Ancient symbols flowed across its exterior like living light. Some seemed mathematical. Others appeared almost like a language. All remained undeciphered. What changed? Reyes asked. A technician looked up nervously. We don't know. You don't know. No, Director. The sphere activated on its own. Then it transmitted a signal. Destination. The technician hesitated. We couldn't track it. That answer unsettled everyone in the room. Humanity possessed some of the most advanced communication systems in existence. Every signal left a trace. Every transmission had, yet this one seemed to bypass non-physics entirely. Reyes stared at the sphere. For decades, only a handful of people had known the truth about its discovery. During the final years of the Velora War, a damaged exploration vessel had emerged from deep space carrying extraordinary findings. The crew never returned alive. Their ship drifted into human territory under automated control. Inside were records of an impossible location near the galactic frontier. A region where stars appeared older than the universe itself. A place where physics behaved strangely. And at the center of that anomaly rested the sphere. Human scientists had spent generations studying it in secret. Not because they feared its power. Because they feared what created it. The data recovered from the exploration ship contained fragmented translations. Most were incomplete. Some were terrifying. One recurring phrase appeared throughout the records. The keepers shall return. Nobody knew who the keepers were. Nobody knew whether they still existed. Yet every expert who examined the data reached the same conclusion. The artifact had not been built by any known civilization. Not even close. Its creators operated on a scale that dwarfed anything humanity or the Council could imagine. For decades the sphere remained silent. Now it had awakened. And nobody knew why. Meanwhile, hundreds of light years away, the Galactic Council celebrated its success. The sanctions against humanity were working exactly as planned. Or so officials claimed. In reality, troubling reports were beginning to emerge. Trade volumes were declining. Supply chains were weakening. Several major infrastructure projects had stalled. Many council worlds depended heavily on human technology. Replacing it proved more difficult than expected. Still, Chancellor Verex dismissed concerns. The adjustment period is temporary. The statement was broadcast across dozens of systems. The galaxy no longer relies upon humanity. Many citizens accepted the explanation. Others were less convinced. Among them was Admiral Kel Torin. The veteran commander had fought alongside humans during the Velora War. Unlike many politicians, he remembered history clearly. He remembered who had stood and fought while others fled. And he did not trust the Council's sudden hostility. When intelligence reports arrived showing unusual activity within human territory, Torin paid attention. Research facilities expanding. Exploration fleets launching. Industrial production increasing dramatically. None of it resembled a civilization in decline. Quite the opposite. Humanity appeared stronger than ever. That realization troubled him. Because civilizations preparing for collapse did not invest in exploration. They invested in survival. Humanity seemed to be preparing for something else entirely. Something larger. On Earth, President Hale received an urgent classified briefing. Only 12 individuals held clearance high enough to view the contents. The meeting took place inside the Strategic Security Command beneath the Himalayas. Images from Mars appeared on a massive display. The activated sphere rotated slowly. Streams of unknown symbols covered its surface. A silence settled over the room. Finally, Hale spoke. How bad is it? Dr. Reyes appeared via secure transmission. We don't know yet. That's not reassuring. No, sir. She brought up additional data. Energy readings. Spatial distortions. Communication anomalies. Each graph looked worse than the previous one. The sphere isn't just active, she explained. It's changing. The room became silent. What does that mean? Asked one of the generals. Reyes hesitated. It appears to be constructing something. The display zoomed closer. Microscopic scans revealed layers of material forming around the sphere. Complex structures emerged from seemingly empty space, as if matter itself was being manufactured. Several officials exchanged uneasy glances. One scientist whispered a single word. Impossible. Reyes nodded. That's what we thought. The president folded his arms. What happens if it finishes? Again, silence. Nobody had an answer. 3 weeks later, the first disappearance occurred. A deep space monitoring station near the galactic rim stopped responding. No distress call. No warning. One moment it existed. The next moment it vanished. Investigators assumed equipment failure. Then another station disappeared. Then another. Then 5 more. All located near the edge of explored space. All gone without explanation. Panic remained contained. The incidents were classified. Only senior military officials received reports. But hidden within the data was a disturbing pattern. Every disappearance occurred along a line. A line pointing toward the Milky Way. Something was moving. Something enormous. And it was approaching. The truth emerged 1 month later. A long-range telescope finally captured an image. The photograph arrived simultaneously at Earth and Council headquarters. Within minutes, emergency meetings were called. Within hours, governments entered crisis mode. The image showed a region of darkness between distant stars. At first glance it seemed empty. Then analysts enhanced the picture. What emerged froze entire rooms into silence. The darkness was not empty. It was a fleet. A fleet so vast that individual vessels were impossible to count. Millions. Perhaps billions. Ancient structures larger than planets drifted among them. Each vessel emitted the same energy signature detected from the Martian sphere. The same signature. The same technology. The same origin. At the bottom of the report, one final estimate appeared. Time until arrival at approximately 18 months. For the first time in centuries, fear spread across the galaxy. And humanity realized that the forgotten warnings hidden within the artifact had been true all along. The keepers were returning. And no one knew whether they had come as friends, judges, or executioners. The galaxy learns the truth. The image of the approaching fleet shattered the illusion of security that had protected the galaxy for centuries. Emergency sessions were called across hundreds of worlds. Military commands were placed on high alert. News networks interrupted normal programming. For the first time since the Velora War, the fear spread. No one knew exactly what the keepers were. No one knew what they wanted. But everyone understood one thing. A force capable of constructing fleets on such a scale represented a threat unlike anything the galaxy had ever. The Galactic Council quickly organized a crisis summit on Arcadia Station. Representatives who had spent years arguing over trade routes and political influence now sat together in uneasy silence. At the center of the chamber stood Chancellor Virex. His confident demeanor had vanished. The Council Defense Network has completed its assessment. Our combined fleets are insufficient. Murmurs swept through the chamber. Insufficient. The word felt impossible. The Council possessed tens of millions of warships. Thousands of fortified systems. Weapons capable of destroying planets. Yet their own analysts were declaring defeat before the enemy had even arrived. An Archon representative rose from his seat. There must be some mistake. There is no mistake, replied the military advisor beside Virex. The giant display behind them illuminated. Images of the approaching fleet filled the chamber. The scale was almost incomprehensible. Some of the structures appeared larger than entire solar systems. Energy readings exceeded known limits. Several vessels seemed to distort space itself. Their technology surpasses ours by orders of magnitude, the advisor continued. If hostile, they could eliminate every major civilization in this galaxy. Silence followed. For once, no politician had an argument. No one could debate mathematics. No one could negotiate with reality. Then came the question everyone dreaded. What does humanity know? The chamber grew still. Because everyone suddenly remembered the same thing. The signal. The artifact. The fact that humanity had discovered it. And the uncomfortable possibility that humanity might know far more than they had ever revealed. On Earth, President Hale watched the Emergency Council broadcast with little expression. Around him sat military leaders, scientists, and intelligence directors. Nobody looked surprised. They had expected this moment. Not because they knew exactly what was coming, but because the artifact's records had warned of it. For decades, humanity had quietly studied fragments of Keeper history. Most translations remained incomplete. Yet enough information had survived to reveal a terrifying picture. The Keepers were not merely an ancient civilization. They were the civilization. Long before the first known species evolved, the Keepers had ruled a vast intergalactic domain. Entire galaxies had existed under their authority. They possessed technology so advanced that modern science could barely describe it. Then, mysteriously, they vanished. The records never explained why. Only that they had departed and left automated systems behind. Systems designed to watch, to monitor, to wait, and eventually, to return. The problem was that the surviving translations ended there. Humanity knew the Keepers had once controlled the universe. They knew the Keepers were coming back. What they did not know was how the Keepers would view the civilizations that had risen in their absence. The answer could determine the fate of trillions. A communication officer entered the room. The Galactic Council is requesting immediate contact. Several officials exchanged glances. Hale almost laughed. For years, the Council had ignored every warning humanity offered. Then they had expelled humanity entirely. Now they wanted help. Put them through. Moments later, the Chancellor Varex appeared on the main screen. He looked older than before. More tired. More frightened. President Hale. Chancellor. A brief silence followed. Neither man seemed eager to speak first. Finally, Varex cleared his throat. The Council wishes to discuss cooperation. One of the human generals couldn't hide his amusement. Cooperation. The word sounded very different now. Hale remained calm. Cooperation is an interesting proposal. Varex looked uncomfortable. The galaxy faces a common threat. That may be true. Then surely we can move past previous disagreements. Previous disagreements. That was how he described humanity's betrayal. Several human officials openly frowned. Yet Hale surprised everyone. He nodded. Humanity will help. Even Varex appeared shocked. You will. We will. The Chancellor visibly relaxed. For the first time in months, hope appeared on his face. Then Hale continued. But there is a condition. The room became silent. What condition? Varex asked. The Council will hear the truth. 3 representatives from every major civilization attended. Military commanders filled the observation galleries. Billions watched from their home worlds. At the center of the chamber stood Dr. Sophia Reyes, the woman who had spent most of her life studying the artifact. She activated the presentation. Ancient symbols appeared above the chamber floor. Then came images. Keeper structures. Fragments of recovered records. Data humanity had guarded for generations. For 6 hours she spoke. No one interrupted. No one moved. The story was too important. When she finally finished, the chamber sat in stunned silence. The galaxy learned that humanity had not hidden the truth out of selfishness. They had hidden it because they did not fully understand it themselves. But one revelation overshadowed everything else. The Keepers had left behind a warning. A single translated passage recovered from the artifact. The final message ever recorded by their civilization. Reyes displayed it above the chamber. The words glowed in pale blue light. Every being present read them. And every being felt the same chill. When we return, we shall judge what remains. No explanation followed. No criteria. No mercy. Only judgment. The implications were horrifying. If the Keepers considered modern civilizations unworthy, the council chamber erupted into chaos. Representatives shouted over one another. Some demanded immediate military action. Others argued for surrender. Several called for evacuation plans. Panic spread rapidly. But amid the noise, Admiral Kel Torin noticed something unusual. Another line hidden within the recovered records. A detail most people had overlooked. He requested the floor. Reluctantly, the chamber granted it. Torin stepped forward. The warning is incomplete. The room quieted. He pointed toward a section of translated text. Everyone focused on judgment. His finger moved to another passage. But not on who was chosen. The display enlarged. Ancient keeper symbols appeared beside a translated sentence. For several seconds nobody understood its meaning. Then realization swept through the chamber like lightning. Because according to the records, the keepers had not left all civilizations unmonitored. Thousands of years ago, they had selected a single species to act as custodians until their return. A species that would be evaluated first. A species that would speak on behalf of the younger races. The translation appeared on the massive screen. And every eye in the chamber turned toward the human delegation. The selected custodians were humanity. The species the council had betrayed. The species now standing between the galaxy and whatever judgment awaited. And 18 months away, the keepers continued their relentless ad. Judgment Day. The revelation struck the galaxy like a supernova. Humanity had been chosen. Not the ancient Archon Dominion. Not the technologically superior Lissari Collective. Not even the Galactic Council itself. Humanity, the very species the Council had expelled, isolated, and betrayed, had been designated by the Keepers as custodians of the younger races. Across countless worlds, reactions ranged from disbelief to panic. Politicians demanded verification. Scientists re-examined every translation. Historians searched ancient records for contradictions. None were found. The evidence was overwhelming. Somewhere in the distant past, the Keepers had entrusted humanity with a responsibility no one had known existed. And now the Keepers were returning to see whether that responsibility had been honored. On Arcadia Station, the Council entered its darkest hour. Chancellor Verex sat alone in his office, staring at the stars beyond the station's transparent dome. For years he had convinced himself that removing humanity was necessary. A political decision. A strategic decision. A decision for stability. Now he could no longer avoid the truth. He had been wrong. Terribly wrong. His ambition and fear had helped divide the galaxy. A notification appeared on his desk terminal. The latest report from long-range observatories. He opened it. His face went pale. The Keepers were accelerating. Their estimated arrival had been reduced from 18 months to 11. Something had changed. And whatever it was bringing judgment closer. On Earth, humanity prepared in a very different way. There was no panic. No mass hysteria. No collapse of order. Instead, there was focus. For generations, humanity had survived by confronting impossible situations. This would be no different. The Martian sphere continued evolving. The mysterious structure forming around it had now grown to nearly 2 kilometers in diameter. Researchers no longer believed it was merely a machine. It resembled a gateway. An enormous gateway. Dr. Sophia Reyes stood inside the observation chamber watching streams of energy flow across its surface. The artifact seemed increasingly alive. Almost aware. For months, the scientists had attempted communication. Until now, they had received nothing. Then, unexpectedly, everything changed. One evening, every monitor in the facility activated simultaneously. Warning alarms echoed through the complex. The sphere illuminated brighter than ever before. Symbols raced across its surface. And then a voice emerged. Not through speakers. Not through radio transmissions. It appeared directly inside the minds of every person present. The message consisted of only 6 words. The custodians must prepare the answer. Reyes nearly dropped her data tablet. Around her, dozens of scientists exchanged shocked glances. The sphere had spoken. More importantly, it had spoken specifically to humanity. Within hours, the message reached Earth. And for the first time, humanity, not war. Not conquest. An answer. The question remained unknown. But the distinction mattered. Because civilizations seeking answers behaved differently than civilizations seeking destruction. As the months passed, the galaxy transformed. Old rivalries faded. Ancient enemies, military fleets once prepared for war now escorted refugee convoys and supply transports. The looming arrival of the Keepers forced everyone to reconsider what truly mattered. Humanity led much of the effort. Despite the Council's betrayal, human engineers repaired failing infrastructure on distant worlds. Human medical teams assisted struggling colonies. Human fleets protected trade routes without demanding payment. Many species expected resentment. Instead, they found generosity. Admiral Torin witnessed it firsthand. While traveling between systems, he observed human crews risking their lives to save populations that had openly supported sanctions against Earth. The contradiction puzzled many outside. Finally, one journalist asked a human captain why. The response spread across the galaxy. Because doing the right thing isn't supposed to depend on who deserves it. The statement became famous. And slowly, public opinion shifted. Species that had once celebrated humanity's expulsion began questioning everything they had been told. Historical records were reviewed. Political corruption investigations followed. Evidence emerged showing how misinformation campaigns had manipulated entire populations. Trust in the Council collapsed. Chancellor Verex eventually resigned. His final public address lasted less than 5 minutes. He accepted responsibility and stepped down without protest. Few mourned his departure. 8 months before arrival, the Keepers sent their first direct signal. Every communication network in the galaxy received it simultaneously. Every screen activated. Every transmission channel was interrupted. The message contained no image. Only a voice. Ancient. Calm. Immensely powerful. They appointed our approaches. Entire civilizations listened in silence. The custodians shall answer. A pause followed. Then came the question. The question humanity had been waiting for. The question the Keepers apparently considered more important than fleets or weapons. More important than technology. More important than power itself. The voice spoke again. When given strength over others, what did you choose to become? Then the transmission ended. No threats. No demands. No declarations of war. Just a question. A single question directed at humanity. Across Earth, people debated its meaning. Governments analyzed it. Philosophers discussed it endlessly. Yet the answer eventually became obvious. The Keepers were not evaluating military capability. They were evaluating character. Humanity's role as custodian had never been about dominance. It had been about responsibility. The realization spread rapidly through human society. By the time the Keepers arrived, humanity knew exactly what answer they would give. The challenge was whether the galaxy would survive long enough to hear it. 3 months before arrival, disaster struck. A radical faction within the former council launched a desperate attack against the Martian gateway. They believed the Keepers represented an existential threat. Their plan was simple. Destroy the artifact. Destroy the gateway. Prevent contact. Hundreds of stolen warships emerged near Mars. The battle that followed became one of the most important moments in human history. Not because of the attack, but because of humanity's response. Human defenses quickly overwhelmed the attackers. Victory was certain. The rebels expected annihilation. Instead, the human commanders offered surrender. Thousands accepted. Millions of lives were spared. As the surviving ships were escorted away, footage spread throughout the galaxy. Humanity had once again chosen restraint when revenge would have been easier. And deep within the Martian gateway, the ancient sphere responded. For the first time in recorded history, the structure opened. A corridor of golden light stretched into impossible depths. At its center appeared a symbol identical to those found in the oldest Keeper records. The gateway was ready. The keepers were close. And somewhere beyond the stars, an ancient civilization that had once ruled the universe was preparing to judge not merely humanity, but the entire galaxy through humanity's example. The final answer would soon determine the fate of the universe. The day of the keeper's arrival became known throughout history by many names. The final judgment. The day of reckoning. The dawn of the second age. But for humanity, it was simply the day the truth was revealed. Across the galaxy, billions gathered before screens, observatories, and communication arrays. Entire worlds seemed to hold their breath. The keepers were finally here. Their immense fleet emerged from the darkness beyond the galactic rim. Stars disappeared behind structures so vast they seemed impossible. Planet-sized vessels drifted silently through space. Great rings of light surrounded ancient constructs whose purposes could not even be guessed. Yet despite their overwhelming power, they made no aggressive move. No weapons fired. No worlds burned. No fleets advanced. They simply arrived. And waited. Near Mars, the gateway activated. Golden energy surged across its colossal frame. The corridor of light expanded until it stretched across millions of kilometers. Then something stepped through. At first, the observers thought it was a ship. Then they realized it was something else. The being towered above any vessel humanity had ever constructed. It was not merely a representative of the keepers. It was a keeper. The first one seen in countless millions of years. Every communication system in the galaxy activated instantly. The being's voice reached every world simultaneously. We have returned. No translator was required. Every listener understood. The words seemed to bypass language itself. The keeper turned toward Earth. Toward humanity. And then it asked the question once more. When given strength over others, what did you choose to become? Silence followed. The answer would determine everything. President Marcus Hell stood within the United Earth Assembly Hall. Beside him were scientists, soldiers, diplomats, workers, and citizens from every corner of human space. No speechwriters had prepared this moment. No script existed. Hell simply spoke. We were given strength. His voice traveled across the galaxy. Not because we were superior. Not because we were chosen above others. But because circumstances placed responsibility in our hands. The keeper remained motionless. Hell continued. We failed sometimes. We made mistakes. We fought wars. We argued. We disagreed. But whenever we were strongest, we tried to protect rather than dominate. Images began appearing across galactic networks. Human fleets defending Council worlds during the Velora War. Human rescue teams saving colonies. Human engineers rebuilding shattered systems. Human ships accepting the surrender of the rebels at Mars. Not perfection. But effort. Again and again. For centuries. When others feared, when others betrayed us, we chose cooperation. When others needed help, we gave it. Hell looked directly toward the enormous keeper. If strength has any purpose at all, it is to lift others rather than stand above them. The galaxy fell silent. Waiting. Judgment had arrived. For nearly a minute, the keeper said nothing. Then the impossible happened. The ancient being bowed. Not deeply. Not dramatically. But a gesture of respect. Shock spread across every world. The keeper's voice echoed once more. The answer is accepted. Relief exploded throughout the galaxy. People cheered. Governments celebrated. Military commanders relaxed for the first time in years. The crisis was over. Or so they thought. The keeper raised one luminous hand. Judgment is complete. Reward shall follow. Confusion replaced relief. Reward? No one understood. Then the keeper explained. And the entire universe changed. Millions of years earlier, the Keepers had reached the limits of their civilization. There were no greater enemies left to defeat. No larger territories left to explore. No mysteries left unsolved. Power had become meaningless. So they created a final test. A way to determine whether younger civilizations could succeed where many ancient species had failed. The test was never technological. It was moral. Any civilization could build weapons. Any civilization could accumulate power. Far fewer could use power wisely. The Keepers had watched countless galaxies. Most failed. Some destroyed themselves. Others became tyrannies. Many vanished entirely. Humanity had done something different. Not because humans were flawless, but because they consistently chose cooperation over domination when it mattered most. Even after betrayal. Even after exclusion. Even after injustice. The galaxy had been judged through humanity's actions. And humanity had passed. The Keeper extended its hand. The stars themselves seemed to brighten. The inheritance shall be granted. What followed became the greatest transformation in recorded history. Across the galaxy, the dormant Keeper systems awakened. Ancient gateways activated between distant worlds. Energy shortages disappeared overnight. Diseases once considered incurable were eliminated. Terraforming technologies reshaped barren planets into thriving ecosystems. Travel that once required months took minutes. Scientific knowledge accumulated over millions of years. The gift was beyond measure. Entire generations struggled to comprehend its scale. For the first time, conflict declined. Exploration expanded beyond anything previously imagined. The galaxy entered an age of prosperity unlike any before it. And all because humanity had answered one question correctly. Years later, historians often debated the title of the event. Many preferred The Great Inheritance. Others favored The Keeper Return. Yet one phrase remained the most popular. The universe paid the price. At first glance, the name seemed strange. After all, the outcome had been positive. But the phrase carried a deeper meaning. When the Galactic Council betrayed humanity, they believed humanity would suffer. They believed power could be taken away through politics and fear. Instead, the betrayal revealed humanity's true character. The Council paid the price for its arrogance. The galaxy paid the price for believing lies. And ultimately, the universe paid the price as well. Because the Keeper's reward was so immense that it reshaped existence itself. Entire civilizations evolved beyond anything previously imaginable. The whole universe vanished. A greater one took its place. In the centuries that followed, humanity never ruled the galaxy. They never became emperors. They never demanded tribute. Instead, they became what the Keepers had always hoped they would be. Guides. Builders. Protectors. The first among equals. And on a quiet evening many years later, Dr. Sophia Reyes stood beside the nurse. The artifact that had started everything rested peacefully beneath the red suns. She looked toward the stars. Humanity had once feared the Keepers. The Council had once feared humanity. Both fears had proven unnecessary. In the end, the future of the galaxy had not been decided by weapons, fleets, or it had been decided by a choice. The choice of what to become when given strength over others. And because humanity chose compassion over conquest, mercy over revenge, and unity over division, the galaxy survived. The Keepers departed. And the universe itself became richer for it. The Galactic Council had betrayed humanity. But in the end, humanity saved them anyway. And the universe paid the price in the most wonderful way imaginable.